of Education to order. I'd like to welcome all visitors who came to be present tonight. Additions to the agenda, we have one addition to the agenda.
We have one addition, that is for Tyler Clark. Had asked to be able to speak, and we might put him in between agenda item 1 and 2, so it would be like 1B. And that,
Okay, we need to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the agenda with noted change.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda with the addition to the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, motion carried. At your places, you had another check register plus mailed to you.
and 2 that were
Mailed.
mailed, and there's a third one at your place.
We'll look those over. Approve the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on to patron comments. In here, it's good. What, everyone? Okay, moving on to business items. Number 1, Mr. Roden's here to speak to us tonight.
Yeah, Jim Runner had contacted me back in maybe February or so. Just wanting to come and speak to the board about some concerns, thoughts, ideas regarding the local alumni association. And she's, your capacity, are you chair of that this year?
President, yes.
President, yeah. So, if you'd like to come on up, you can stand or sit.
Shall I get here so I can get a good shot of it?
Whatever is your best side.
I think I'll give you the back of my head.
There, that's the best.
Well, thank you for letting me come and vent on you a little bit. The alumni of St. John is having a little bit of a problem, and I gave you a list here, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but thinking about the alumni and the foundation that you formed kind of go hand in hand. If you don't have a good, strong alumni, I don't know where your foundation is going to go, but it would appear to me that you would be farther ahead to have a strong foundation. So, having said that, I think you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 on the board that are alumni. 2 that aren't, right?
Yeah, I'm not.
So, I guess what I'm asking is that board members and administration help us out a little by maybe pushing the seniors to the alumni banquet when they get out, when they graduate. Their first year is free. I don't know if they know that or not. They're a guest of the Alumni Association. And when I was in high school, we were not asked whether we wanted to go. We were told to go. We went in a suit and a tie, and the girls, the ladies had on their formals. So we didn't have a choice. We went. But I haven't missed very many of them, and there's one lady in town, Farrell Dean Rooms, that has not missed one alumni banquet, and she is 92. So she's been to a lot of alumni banquets. I think this started about 30 years ago, as near as I can tell, 36 years ago. And the kids decided they weren't going to come to the alumni banquet, and when they came back for their first year, their 5th year, their 10th year, they didn't come to the banquet. They just had their own thing. They did their own thing, and so the banquet attendance has just been going down and down and down. And as you can see on the paper, that's about 1,080 fewer individuals we've got to draw from in that 36 years. The most people I can remember being to alumni banquet was 1,200 people when we celebrated our 100-year celebration. And the whole gym was full, and the upstairs was full. And that's the biggest one I can remember. Last year was the smallest one I remember, and there was 125. I need some information on the foundation so I can tell the alumni people this year, and I need to know who the recipient was of the award. I need to ask if tours can be given through the school on Saturday, somewhere between 9 and 11 or 12. And we've got alumni that are employees of the district. I don't know if they'd help out on this or not, but we need help with that. We need help with tables and chairs and cleanup. We were going through names the other night of people that are employed by USD 350 that are alumni. And there's quite a few of them. I think we missed a few, but I'd like to have a list of all of your employees so we could go down through them and say how many people are employed by the school district that are alumni. I think that would be interesting. Mike, I was listening to the ball game the other night, and I heard you interviewed, and you flipped off a list of everything that was going on in the St. John High School and what all the awards have been received by students, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd like to have a list of that. I think the alumni would be very interested. Music, scholastic, sports, whatever. And you might send that list of seniors to me when I listened to the ball game Saturday on the girls' championship game, and they said that not only were they really good basketball players, but they were all honor students. And that got me to thinking how many of the volleyball team were, what percentage of students of the total school are on the honor roll, and what would be the percentage of graduates attending higher education institutions. And then if any awards that have been given to the school, USD 350 in the past year. And maybe you all got some ideas for us poor old alumni folks, because we're trying to run this thing and we're about out of steam. I volunteered to be president this year. Bobette Davis volunteered to be secretary, and Judy Fox volunteered to be vice president after I coerced her. And if we wouldn't have done that, there would have been no banquet this year. So we just decided, rather than just stopping it, we should have one more and let the folks vote whether they want to do it one more time or keep going the way we are or whatever. So I appreciate the time, and I know you all want to get home for the ball game, so I'll quit.
Oh, yeah, I'm in a big hurry.
Any questions?
I think most of the stuff on your list are things that we can come up with. As far as how the foundation part works, I think it might be good if we just invite you to one of our foundation meetings at some point, because I think there's some, when we had talked earlier, I think there's some information you have that could be beneficial as far as a database.
Yeah, Sybil has put together a database on a lot of the classes, and we didn't go back to the old classes, but she has put a list together that probably could be used by the school. And when we started in on the museum, Lucille Hall Museum, we were looking for a database to go to because we wanted to do a mailing. There wasn't any. And I think, personally, I don't know why the school hasn't maintained one all these years, but it would really be interesting to know where people are. And I know when I was in the bank, I was always having people come in and say, well, where's so-and-so? And I had this book that they put out for the 100-year celebration, and I'd go to that a lot. But people moved. But it really would be good if you had a database and somebody could keep it up to date, because I think it would be used.
And it is, I mean, with the advent of the internet and some of the, there are services out there where I think it's a lot easier now to, if you lose track of somebody, to find them.
Track them,
Yeah,
yeah.
so,
That's scary.
yeah.
But I'm sure Sybil would share that with you.
Okay, that'd be great.
And I don't think she'd probably even charge you for it.
I think Mr. Bergen and I will be in touch with you about
Okay.
some of this information that you're looking for.
Thank you for the time.
Great.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim.
It's nice being back since, I've been gone since, what, 86? A lot of change.
There's a couple empty chairs on stage.
I think I'll go home and watch the ball game. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up, Mark. Come on up. And Natalie, I said Tyler,
Okay, I can talk about, okay.
but, yeah.
Thanks.
I was just going to announce to the board that I have been accepted into the Kansas Academy of Math and Science at Hayes. We got a call a couple weeks back and they said I'd be a member of the pilot class. And I'd just like to thank the board for their help and then any continuing help. But thank you for all your efforts and hope to still be a member of St. John High School and be attending classes at Hayes. Hopefully bring a little bit of honor to our school.
Exciting. Excited for it. Yeah, you and just to review for you how it works, what he applied for is called the Kansas Academy of Math and Science. And they ended up with how many in the class?
So far, I think if they go with the CAMS Light proposal, which is the second proposal after the budget, they'll have 30 students.
And what Tyler will do is he'll actually complete basically his junior and senior credits concurrently while taking coursework at Fort Hayes. And when you finish, you'll have how many hours? 60? 72. And but he'll graduate with his class here. So, but it's a great honor. I'm excited for you and eager to hear what life is like for a junior in high school, being also a freshman in college. So it'll be a different experience. So look forward to reports on that. So congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Are you going to stay in Hayes then?
Yeah, I'll be staying up at the dorm in Hayes, and they just renovated Kessler Hall, so we're all going to be staying in there.
All 30 of you will be in one group?
Yeah.
That'll be nice.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your support, and he looks forward to still, feel like he's part of the class, because I think his test scores will be banked back to St. John High for the state assessments. And then, have they sent a contract out to the high school?
The
Kansas
camps,
Academy?
I haven't seen one yet.
Should be a packet coming soon.
Should be back, yeah. I haven't seen one yet.
But he did get the opportunity. Dr. Hammond, the president of the university, asked him to speak, I don't know if you saw in the paper, before the Senate and House Education Committees. And he got a letter from Dale Dennis, Deputy Education Commissioner, commending him for his work. And so, if anyone's interested, we have all those letters. So
Yeah.
we appreciate St. John High.
Thank you.
Thank you for
And I hope if you have any questions, holler, but he still looks forward to participating, hopefully in prom and homecoming and some of those traditional activities.
Yeah, prom.
Thank you. Summer school.
Just a short presentation on that. We're proposing to continue having summer school for this current school year. Just a reminder to the board, we have operated summer school for the last couple of years as a K-6 program, Haven't had really numbers to warrant having a high school program, so we discontinued that a couple of years ago. But we do still have pretty good numbers of the kids that benefit from the K-6 program. Primary way in which kids are identified for that, I'm going to let Mr. Losey speak to here in a minute. One of the things I know is probably a concern for some is how we're going to pay for this with all the budget issues we have. One of the things about how budgets work is certain budget items, when you establish funds into those budgets, it's a one-way street. So you put the money into the fund, you can't back it out. So we already have funds in the budget for summer school, and we can't use it for anything but summer school, and we can't take it back. So because how we have those funds, it seems appropriate to use them towards some sort of benefit for kids. We will probably not put funds in there depending on how budgets look for following years, but at least for this current year, we do have money set aside for it. So I think it would be beneficial for the kids, so that's why we're recommending it. Mr. Losey, if you want to speak just a little bit to how we identify the kids.
Students in grades 3 through 6, we look at the assessment test scores and teacher recommendation. Would benefit from being in summer school. Now, kindergarten, first and second, we don't do the state assessments, so that's on teacher recommendation. Oftentimes it's parent request that their children are in summer school, and we never turn anyone down if they want to be there. And we do have some kids that, well, we did have some kids there, they happen to be in the 7th grade now, that all the time that they were eligible for summer school, they would come, simply because they wanted to be there more in a social atmosphere, I guess you could say, rather than the academic, but we never turn anyone away. Summer school is just in the morning, and it will be, we run it for 4 weeks. We'll start on June 1st and run the first 4 weeks in June.
Okay. Any other questions?
How many teachers are you looking at?
Oh, gosh, I would have to look at that. I think we've had 5?
5? Yeah.
I think 5. And then we usually have hire one teacher aide to help with that.
You said in the future you'd be looking at how much does it cost them to do
I
it?
think last year, I want to say it cost us about $12,000. Does that sound about right, Carolyn?
Yes.
I think that's about right, 12,000. I think we have budgeted 15 or 16, so.
Mr. President, I move the board approve summer school for the 08-09 school year as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve summer school. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. All opposed, same sign, motion carried. Legislative and state finance review. Ding.
Just a quick review of where we're at. Some of this I presented to you last month, and the picture is a little bit clearer, but I'll tell you in a minute about a component of it that we still don't know about yet, as soon as we get light. Yeah, I know. It's getting there. Yeah. Slow on up. There's only one difference on this page from what I showed you last week, or last month. I kind of walked you through what our current enrollment was, what our projected enrollment was, reminded you that our funding is done either by current year enrollment, last year's enrollment, or the 3-year average, whichever of those three is the highest number. In our case, that's the 3-year average because we have declining enrollment. So projecting enrollment of 340 would give us a 3-year average of 362. Our current base budget per pupil when we started the school year was $44.33. The legislature took back $33 per kid, so it actually was only $4,400 for the current school year. And what has now actually been passed by the Senate and House, I don't think the governor has acted on it yet, for next year is $43.67 per kid. That's for general fund. The part that is still kind of hanging out there that we don't know about is there's a bill that has been introduced in the House and Senate and will be considered when the House and Senate comes back for the veto session on April 29th. That would allow school districts to figure their local option budget as if the funding amount was $44.33, as if nothing had changed with that. The reason for that is, if you'll remember, our general fund budget, our local option budget is a percentage of our general fund budget. And so what they realized was, as they're taking this money away from us, for this year $33, and for next year they're proposing $66 per kid, if you're taking that money away, that means that your general fund is getting smaller. So if your general fund gets smaller, so will your local option budget if you don't change anything. So they proposed, someone did, that we could figure our local option budget as if everything had stayed the same, $44.33. We have yet to see how that bill is going to be processed through. If they do go ahead and process that bill through and it gets signed by the governor, that would give us at least a little bit of cushion to offset some of the losses that we're looking at in funding. We are not at the maximum of our LOB. Many districts are. For all those districts that are at the maximum on the LOB, it won't help them, but it will prevent them from being hurt even further. So, figures that I shared with you that I received from Dale Dennis, when I talked to him and said, this is what we're looking at for numbers, he projected that our budget reduction would be about $130,000. So that would mean that our we'd be looking at a general fund budget of about $3,170,000. Our audit, we just finished it. Finished our student audit today. So our final budget authority for this year is probably going to be about $3,268,000. I think is what Carolyn and I figured out. So he had initially told me $130,000 different from this year. That was before our audit, so pretty close to that amount. We know our insurance is going to go up $16,000 at least. Salary schedule, just for everybody that's moving down a step, is about $8,000. There are things that we don't have factored in here, like are we going to get any increase in our property insurance? What will fuel and energy sources do in terms of those costs? So at least at this point, we're looking at either having less or needing additional revenue to the tune of about $154,000. That's how it currently stands. As I said, we do have some cushion in our local option budget, probably somewhere around $70,000 to $75,000 of funds there that we still could look at utilizing if we needed to offset some of that. But we also need to look at where can we reduce staff. That's our biggest cost, where can we reduce other expenses, so. But with about 80% of our budget in staff, that's the primary place that we have to look. Just to remind you, these are not, again, in any set order. One possible area to look is at some of our sports and activities. We have a number of sports where we have added third coaches or second coaches. It may be that if we're going to make reductions kind of across the board with staff, that we do it in even in areas like this. Even though any individual position is not particularly large, to take a percentage out of here, similar to what we're doing with some of the other positions, would probably be appropriate to do so. Any questions about any of those? Those are just our current positions and dollar amounts associated with them. Another area is classified staff. Once again, these are not in any necessarily set order. There's a couple items on there. For example, the temperature setback we've already done. But freezing professional development and changing library hours are both things that don't impact personnel, so they would definitely be things I would recommend doing. The lunchroom second entree, again, is an item that we've discussed and would recommend because it doesn't affect personnel. The discontinued summer school would only impact the, next year, but that's what we're talking about with these particular reductions as we look at these, is everything is for next year. So, and then you get into some of the personnel areas. And then finally, certified reductions. These are just the dollar amounts for these different increments. The reason I'm just putting this in front of you is so you can see them, be reminded of them. Probably in the next week, we will know from the state what exactly we're going to be working with. In terms of dollar amount, we will schedule a second April board meeting. There'll be a special meeting strictly to look at these reductions and to make some recommendations, and then have board approval for making some of these reductions. So that'll be not that all of our meetings aren't important, but that'll be a particularly important one. And we'll talk about that later in this meeting as far as how we might schedule that and when. But as you look at these, I mean, you have 132,000 there. The coaching area has 84. If I can get back up here, yeah. Classifieds and other reductions 197. So we can reach whatever target we feel like we need to hit. It's just how severe will it impact programs trying to get there. We do have reductions we can make, which is better than some districts that they don't even have enough room in their current structure to make the kind of changes they're going to need to make. So one other thing I would mention is when we look at these things, we try to take advantage of retirements and resignations whenever possible to leverage those. So particularly in the certified area, try to take advantage of those situations. So, and remember, these are all just targets. We don't even know yet how deep that we need to go in each of these areas. As I said, we'd like to do it representative though, across all of them,
But right now, we're looking at about 150,000.
just to stay level, yeah. If we, for example, wanted to be able to have a little bit, if, you know, let's say we wanted to do a 1% salary increase, then we have to have additional dollars to do that, so you have to make additional reductions to accomplish that, so. I mean, there are two factors that I have included in here. I'm sure some wouldn't look at these as increases in benefits, but these two items right here, allowing people to move on the salary schedule, and then also picking up additional health insurance costs. There are some districts I know that aren't going to do that. Some of them basically are just freezing their salary schedule and saying nobody's moving. But we're trying to position ourselves to be able to keep providing things for our staff, keep ourselves in the right proportion of staff per the number of students we have. And so that's what we've always talked about as people resign, as people retire, looking at reorganizing how we operate, not have to fill positions to take advantage of those vacancies. Questions or comments that anyone has? Yes?
On the, how much money the state's saying that we're gonna get, does that include some federal money from the economic stimulus that they have put in there to get that number to only be $67 less than it was last year?
That 4367 number, that is with,
And how much, what would that number have been without the federal money?
this is with wild ballpark guess, it might have been $150 to $180.
And, you know, that's, I'm just sitting here thinking, whatever you do, a year from now, can you be counting on federal money to be there again? And kinda need to plan accordingly to next year's.
Yeah, we might have
Number.
another 150,000.
Without that.
Looking a year ahead too, enrollment wise, that 3-year average is gonna drop again, right?
Well,
Will they let you do that another year?
one of the things that really makes this severe for this coming year is we have 31 seniors, 32 seniors leaving, 16. It's gone up.
Yes,
It's a good thing. 16 kindergartners coming in, and when we've normally had kindergarten classes of like 25 to 28. Now the following year after that, the one year you're talking about, we're looking at being back up to around 25 or 26.
We have 32 on the list.
On the list. So that would actually, our 3-year average, it might be that we might not use the 3-year average. It might be that we use the current enrollment, because that might be higher than the 3-year average. But Stan's exactly right. The federal stimulus money, I don't think we can count on it. So, what we will have to continue to do is to continue to look at when we have retirements and resignations. That's why we've looked at some of the class sizes to see where we have small sizes, and we're making adjustments there to try to use staff as efficiently as possible. So, but there is the remote possibility that the following year, if it were to be really severe again, that we might have to reduce some staff, some that even are tenured. So I don't see that as being the case this year, what we're talking about this coming year, but the year following, depending on what happens, we could be looking at something like that.
Mr. Lozey?
Yes.
Was that 16 that are going to come, or 16
No,
went through the
that
screening?
16 that
And
went
there may
through.
be less,
Well, there may be more.
well,
That's a possibility, yes.
but
That
there's
they-
some
Late
borderline-
birthdays, they choose not to send, yes.
At this point, we're still proposing just one section of kindergarten.
Right.
Yes.
Right, but I was just, 16 is at a, it may be a couple less than that.
It very possibly could. There were 16 that went through the screening and everybody, for lack of a better term, passed the screening. But some of them do have later birthdays, and we look at maturity factors and things like that.
My only comment is, this year's may be easy compared to next year's if there's no federal money. You're right.
Well, the one part of it I will
Excuse me.
say is that everyone will be in the same boat.
Right,
So,
but,
that doesn't make it any more pleasant if we're all singing, but, as I said, we will be in contact with board members and scheduling a special meeting, for later in April, and we will make recommendations based upon the numbers that we know we have, in terms of these reductions. And at that point, the board will have the opportunity to discuss those and kind of push and pull on some of those a little bit, those proposals. But we will be looking for some decisions from the board in support of those recommendations, so.
one other thing, and, we'll talk about it next meeting or something, but the, second entree thing, I just wanted people to think about it, that I would rather see us charge for a second entree if the kids wanted it than to do away with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I think what we'd do is we would try that and see how it works.
And when the food's gone, the food's gone. You scarf it down and get back there in line if you want seconds. And
There'll be a whole different learning curve for the food service folks on learning what things kids like to have 5 seconds of, what things don't, in terms of determining how much to prepare. Because if you over prepare, then the waste is the same as spending the money.
Will the
So,
county part of that where the kid, does he just go by again and they swipe their or punch their card?
we'd have to look at the logistics on that and see whether that messes us up or whether they have to pay cash or something like that, but we can figure that part out. So I think they could probably just use their number, so. Okay.
Calendar update?
The calendar committee met, and this, what you see before you, is called calendar proposal 4. It has incorporated as much of the things as we could that were desires, interests, that could still fit within the confines of the calendar. And I'm just gonna kind of scroll through it, and I'll point out a few things to you. And principals, please jump in there if I forget something significant. But because Memorial Day falls so late in this calendar, Memorial Day is on May 31st, we were able to drop the end of school back to the week prior to that, which shouldn't cause problems for parents who want to travel on Memorial Day. By doing that, we were able to drop the start date back. I think last year we started on this current year we're in right now, we started on the 18th, I think, which would, the corresponding date on there would be the 17th. So we were able to move everything back a week. One of the other interests that staff had was in having 2 full weeks off at Christmas break. The original counter proposal, we had us going to school on the 21st and 22nd. So this one actually does have a full 2 weeks off. And one of the other interests was in maybe reducing the amount of professional development. So we identified a couple of half-days that we felt like probably weren't as beneficial as some of the others we have, and removed them from the schedule as well. One of those was in April, and the other one, I believe, was in September. One of the other differences is we have in the past had a parent-teacher conference in first part of February. Is that right, principals?
Yes.
And the turnout has been very, very low. I think this year was probably the lowest we've ever had. Part of the analysis on that is we provide a lot more information to parents as we go along with progress reports and the online grades and things like that. A lot of parents are just much more informed. So we actually dropped that one altogether. So there's not a parent-teacher conference time. One of the things we would emphasize if we do that with this calendar is just for parents, if you have a question or concern from a progress report or something to see online, is just to contact the individual teacher and set up a time to do that. The one thing it shows on this calendar that is not actually for sure set, we have, if I remember right, we have parent conferences set September 21st on this calendar right here. That's in the fall. There has been pretty strong interest, and I think, again, this goes back to the fact that we're providing a lot more information and parents are more informed. With moving that back again somewhere toward the end of the first quarter rather than midway. The difficulty we run into, and that's why it's not set on this calendar, is when you look at when the end of the first quarter is, it's, let's see, October 15th is when, let's see, yeah, is when that would fall. And so figuring it takes 2 or 3 days to do conferences, that puts us somewhere around October 20th, if I went down here with me. That is probably the same week as regional and or sub-state volleyball. And trying to schedule a night event then might be problematic. One possibility could be October 25th, I'm sorry, 26th. Because I don't know if they do.
That's the date we used to do, that'd be the date.
Yeah, that's a Monday. That's getting a little removed. That's like 2 weeks, only about a week and a half removed. I don't know if that's getting too far away for folks or not, but that's kind of where we were looking, but we were wanting to check some of the things to make sure. If we don't do it then we really get pushed later, because once you get past the 26th, you for sure fall into state competition if we're involved with that. If we're not involved with that, it's not an issue, but being the optimists that we are, we're planning on it. So that's the only thing on this calendar that I can recall that really is kind of up in the air. And principals, you can, if there's something else you remember us talking about. One of the things I would remind the board and patrons about, we do keep track. We have student days in class. Parent-teacher conferences count 1 for 1, hour for hour, just like you're teaching. So we get to count 1 day for having parent-teacher conferences. Staff development days count half. So for every full day of staff development you have, it counts half a day of students taught. So we had to be a little bit cautious, you know, with the issue about trying to reduce some of the professional development. We had to make sure and work some days back in, about a half a day for each day that we took out, which, you know, As long as that's all we're taking out, it's not real difficult, but just remind you of that so you can understand how those numbers come out. One other thing about this particular schedule, the way it's, and calendar way it's set up, we do have, about like this year, about 2.5 to 3 days of additional time, because our on 1,116 hours of student contact time. If we were to have a particularly bad winter with this calendar and had more than those number of days as snow days, we would have to come back after Memorial Day. Or we'd have to eliminate something else that we have on the calendar as that's some sort of a holiday or something, or we would have to attend on a Saturday. So.
So how many snow days would we have?
There's about 3.
3?
No, just a little bit short of 3. It's very similar to what we had this year. So, what we'll do is, our plan is to finalize that parent-teacher conference date, and then we would bring this back for board approval at the second April meeting that we plan to have. Unless there's something else that the board sees that they have a question about. One thing that by dropping the whatever you want to call it, winter or spring parent conferences, we created something that I don't think I've ever seen on a school calendar anywhere, anytime. And that is the month of February. It doesn't have a single day off or thing going on. Now there's still lots of sports things, obviously, but I've never seen a school calendar in that month that's clear of anything. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, if there's no other questions.
Which, carry the added agenda items. Board member activities and reports.
District financial report.
I'm sorry.
Because it's up in the district financial report.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that under superintendent's, do the
Okay.
principals have anything?
No board members? Well, then a lot of us went to prom, didn't
Prom was fun.
we? Yeah. Mr. Bergen, did you wear out a pair of shoes out there?
Yeah.
On the dance floor?
I had to get new soles. Moving so fast.
Get a new soul.
Okay, enrollment figures are there for you to look at. This month they're just the same, exactly the same as they were last time. Kansas assessments, we're getting finished up with those. We have, let's see, 3rd, 5th, and 6th grade math to finish up with, and then we'll have them all done. Excuse me, we won't have them all completed. We'll have all the reading and math completed. We still have 4th grade science, and we have our KELPA, which is the test for our bilingual students. The KK at basketball tournament was on March 24th and 25th, and again, we've talked about this and how it's a really good experience for the 5th and 6th graders to play in that, but it's even, I think, more of an experience for the older kids to officiate, to keep the book, to coach the teams. Mrs. Witt does a great job getting all that organized, and it's a fun time for the kids. We're getting down to the place now where you certainly hope that no one is ill on that day, or that they, for some reason, can't make it, because the teams are getting down to where they have 6 or 7 on a team now. So kindergarten roundup was last Wednesday, and as I said, we had 16 students come through. And also, as we talked about, we very possibly could have all 16 of those, or there might be a couple that decide not to send their child. But we will have just the one section of kindergarten. Progress reports go out for the final 9 weeks on April 15th. Again, I know you've heard this, how the school year just seems like it has flown by, or we'll be halfway through the last 9 weeks at that time. And so far, as far as field trips that we have, the only one we have definitely scheduled is our Kansas Kids Fitness Day, which is held at Larned. And that's the one that schools are invited to attend. We get to attend every year because Ms. Friesen is a member of the Association of PE Teachers. That's not the exact wording, but and offers to help with it. So we get to take our kids every year. So that's all I have. Unless there are questions?
What grades go to that honor?
3rd grade, just 3rd grade, yes.
And when you're short of basketball players, doesn't the principal step in and play?
And cheers them on, yes. So you only have 3, but go after it.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
You're welcome.
The enrollment has been pretty, as you can see, been pretty consistent all year. We've been pretty close within 3 or 4 students the whole year. Like the elementary, we're working on state assessments, and reading and math should be finished here pretty soon, and then science will be finished up later this month. Junior senior play is the 18th and 19th. It's on the school calendar, so you're welcome, all invited to come out to watch that. We had the CTL Honors Banquet at Kinsley. It was their turn to host it. We have it every year. Top 10% of the juniors and senior class are invited. And Mrs. Haynes, Dr. Kimberly, and I, we had those 6 students that went with us to Kinsley, and they were recognized. Mrs. Haynes and I will be working on some pre-enrollment information for next year with the students. Hopefully that'll work out where we get to that later at the end of this month. The all-sports banquet for the junior high was held March 26th. Recognized the kids in all the activities. For the last couple of years we've done one where we did them all at one time. So the high school one is coming up in May. And there is a student activity account report. Special places. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ferguson? You're off the hook. Mr. Kimberly.
Coming around is the monthly financial. Not really anything to comment on in particular, just that this time of year, things start feeling real tight financially because we're coming up on the end of our financial year, and so we're watching all the various lines very closely, especially instructional personnel, where that's one of our biggest costs. So it's a little bit under the percentage for this time of year, but we also know that the last couple of months that we have payroll, a lot of things drop off. So that's kind of how it runs each year. Just point out to you again, down there on utilities for electricity, our electricity no longer comes out of our general fund. We're paying for it out of our local option budget. That's why that looks odd like that. We're in the process Also, this time of year, I'm trying to finish up some of the transfers out to our various funds, so especially things like special ed flow through, things like that. We're working on all of those to get those finalized as we go along. Other than that, everything is where we expect it to be this time of year. Other activities and announcements. Did get to attend the CPL Honors Banquet. That was a fun time. To see those kids in a little bit different setting. In case board members hadn't heard about it, we did have the covered walkway that went between the junior high and senior high building collapsed under the weight of 2 feet of snow. And we have removed that and stored the parts in the courtyard, because I think we will be able to reconstruct it, at least from some of the parts. We will build it, design it and build it differently, but we will, this summer, replace that and have something back in there. We'll run it by our architect before we actually build it. I'm not sure that what was built there before actually I'm not sure it went by an architect, so that may have been part of the reason why it collapsed, but we were fortunate that no one was in the area when it happened. So this has been a busy couple of weeks for district office. I want to thank Carolyn and Sheila for all their hard work, because we've gone through 2 different audits. We had our federal funds audit, which you don't do every year, but we did this year. That covers all of our what we call our local consolidated programs, our title programs. And then we also just completed today our student audit. So there's a great deal of documentation that both of those require, and they both do a great job of helping pull those together. So just thankful for that. If you didn't get to attend the basketball celebration, that was a lot of fun. Danny Smith, I don't know if everybody else was as engaged as I was. I mean, he talked for, I don't know, 40 or 50 minutes, and I loved it. I was sitting there, and when I told somebody about it later, they said, "Didn't you get tired of sitting there?" I said, "No." I said, "It was great. I enjoyed it." So, kind of on a side, Danny is probably down at Pratt. Tessa suffered a fall.
Fell off the ceiling, didn't she?
Close to it. Anyways, she broke both ankles and part of the lower leg joint, I think. So, our prayers are with her and her family. So, attended prom and the after prom for a little bit. Kids had a lot of fun. I don't know where they get all the energy, but they kept going full time. It was great. So, track and golf were both underway. It's hard to tell that it's actually track or golf season based on the weather, but they're out there giving it a good shot, so hopefully they'll be bundled up and warm. This Thursday, I'm meeting with Charlie Summers. Charlie is the representative for Bike Across Kansas. I know at times in the past that St. John has been one of the stops, and will be one of the stops again. And this is the, I want to say the 35th anniversary, I think. So they're expecting it to be kind of a big one. I think they're projecting maybe as many as 800 bikers will be coming through. So be meeting, we'll talk logistics, because they usually use school for a backup sleeping facility in case the weather's bad, but also just for showers and things like that. And we've already contacted the city and various food vendors around as far as breakfast and dinner and things like that. So, but could be a lot of fun. I think we are the second stop on the trip. So, just looking down the road quite a ways. Got the band trip coming up. That's April 30th through May 2nd. Does that sound right, Mr. Bergen?
That's right.
And then we follow that up right after by the dessert concert, so. Let's see. I think the only other thing I have is just a reminder to board members and to the public that tomorrow is election day. So make sure you got to vote.
Okay. Moving on to executive session.
I would like 5 minutes for personnel.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters for non-elected employees, and that the board return to open meeting in 5 minutes in this room with Dr. Kenworthy and the principal. The executive session is required to protect the privacy interests of identifiable individuals.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we go into executive session for 5 minutes for personnel matter with the board, superintendent, and building principals. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. All opposed, same sign, motion carried.
School year that we would regretfully accept. Kay has provided wonderful teaching for our kids for 24 years, so we accept it with appreciation to her for that, and would recommend the board approve that.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resignation for Kate Ellis.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resignation of Kay Ellis as kindergarten teacher. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. All opposed, same sign, motion carried.
Also would recommend the employment of Derek Sanders as assistant golf coach for this season.
Chairman, I move we employ Derek Sanders as an assistant golf coach during the season.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve hiring of Derek Sanders as assistant golf coach for this golf season. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. All opposed, same sign, motion carried. Future agenda items.
As we mentioned several times tonight, we will have an additional meeting in April to determine budget reductions and any staffing changes that we need to make. And also, to approve the calendar. In terms of selecting when to do that, if we were to do that, let's say on a Wednesday night, would any board members have concern about that? The reason is Merlin Spare, he's involved with track and FFA, and Monday nights are difficult for him. That's not why he's here tonight, but, not here tonight. Okay, we'll be in touch with board members and coordinate dates to try to get to a date when everybody can attend. If we were to start it a little bit later, if we were to start it at like 8 o'clock, if that would work to help people, would that be appropriate too?
That'll be better for Bill and I.
Okay.
Especially if you get too late.
Still gonna be
snow. Well, it might be, yeah, it might not matter.
All right. Well, we will be in communication with you about that. Appreciate your time.
Okay, entertain the motion to adjourn. Move we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you.